You think you know small-town America? Wait till you see Texas. The mountain ridges, the ranch valleys, the ghost quiet river bends, somehow still affordable while the rest of the country lost its mind. Not a scam, not a collapsing barn held together by duct tape, and definitely not a fake tourist strip with plastic cowboy hats and zero actual cowboys. We're diving into 30 Texas towns that stayed suspiciously cheap, strangely peaceful, and almost unfairly beautiful. The kind of farmhouse life people pay millions for in other states. Except here it shows up on Zillow like it's no big deal. But in Texas, every bargain hides a twist. Maybe it's the distance, maybe it's the weather. Maybe it's the kind of quiet where you start naming the wind. There's always a catch, and that's half the fun. Like and subscribe. By the end, you'll either pack your bags or wonder how these towns stayed this cheap. Let's break down the reality nobody talks about. Childress, where the wind runs the show. Childress kicks off the list with that classic wide-open Texas feeling. You know the kind. Sky so big it feels like it's leaning over your shoulder. And the kicker? A farmhouse here costs less than one semester at community college. No, seriously. This is one of those towns where the land stretches out forever, the pace slows down, and the only thing rushing is the wind. You're in North Texas, right on an old railroad road, with about 6,000 folks scattered across red dirt plains. Farmhouse hover around $145,000, rent hangs near $900, and the cost of living sits roughly 18% below the national average. Crime is moderate, but nothing out of the ordinary for a rural crossroads. A local once said, "The winds are personality," and they weren't kidding. Dust storms show up like they're invited. But the mornings? Step outside and the whole horizon glows orange like a movie opening shot. If this feels remote, the next one doubles down. Hereford, the town that smells like money. Hereford is one of those places where you look at home prices and immediately wonder if someone forgot a zero. You can snag a full house here for less than what you'd spend on a month of groceries in Dallas. And yes, the town really is the beef capital. Ranches, feedlots, and flat horizons stretching so far it feels like somebody erased the background. You've got about 15,000 people, a strong ranching culture, and homes sitting around $160,000. Rent averages $950, and the cost of living is roughly 17% below the national average. Crime sits in the low to moderate range, typical for a busy agricultural hub. Locals have a saying, depends on the wind. Translation, sometimes the smell shows up before the town does. It's part of the charm, or the initiation test. Think semi-trucks humming by, cattle pens warming under sunrise, and a slow, no-drama lifestyle perfect for retirees who want land, quiet, and a little grit. And if beef country surprised you, wait till you see the next prairie oddity. Muleshoe, prairie town with a bronze mule. On Muleshoe, you can get a full starter home costs less than a decent pickup, which already tells you everything about the lifestyle here. You've got around 5,000 people on the edge of the Llano Estacado, a giant bronze mule watching over Main Street, and that classic New Deal era small-town layout that feels untouched by time. Homes sit around $140,000, rent averages $850, and the cost of living is roughly 20% below the national average. Crime stays low, which makes porch sitting a legit hobby. One cashier summed it up perfectly. If the wind stops, check your pulse. That's the rhythm here. Breezy, quiet, steady. Also, rumor has it, the bronze mule once got a traffic ticket. Nobody knows how. Some say it jaywalked. Others swear it ran a stop sign on Main Street at midnight. The cops won't talk, and honestly, neither will the mule. But every year, a new little citation shows up in the town archive just in case anyone forgets who's really running the show around here. Enough of gossip, slide east a bit, and the world slows even more. Tulia, a High Plains time capsule. Roll into Tulia and you'll swear you stepped into a Texas postcard someone forgot to update. You can literally buy a whole house here for less than 1 year of Austin rent, and it won't be the size of a shoebox. Tulia sits out in the High Plains with about 4,600 folks, big wheat fields, and those classic grain elevators that look like they run the town council. Median homes hover around $130,000, rents sit near $800, and the cost of living stays about 21% below the national average. Crime lands in the moderate range, mostly the type where someone's cousin borrows a lawnmower for 3 days. Life moves slow in a good way. Sundays, one local told me, those belong to porches, and it fits. Expect trains honking like they're paid per honk and silos guarding winds that never take a day off. Keep rolling down the open roads and the quiet gets even deeper. Plainview outskirts, sky first, everything else second. Head out to the edges of Plainview and you'll feel the world stretch open like someone peeled the horizon back a few extra miles. This is where retirees grab acre lots for under $100,000 and build that quiet farmhouse life without selling a kidney. The main city has around 22,000 people, but the outskirts feel wide enough for your thoughts to echo. A place where $170,000 gets you a real farmhouse. $1,000 covers rent, and the whole town runs about 12% more affordable than the country overall. Crime's pretty tame. Think missing lawn chairs, not chaos. One retiree told me, "Coyotes sing more than people go out," and honestly, that might be the best nightlife review in Texas. Dust devils follow you like clingy neighbors, and the two-lane roads fade straight into the sky. But if this feels a little too still, the next town brings a bit more rhythm and roots. Littlefield, Wayland's cotton country. Settle into Littlefield and you'll notice how fast your shoulders drop. Something about these wide plains and quiet cotton fields makes retirement feel less like a phase and more like a reward. You can snag a 3-bed farmhouse for about $150,000, rent for roughly $850, and the cost of living sits 19% under the national average. Crime stays in the low to moderate lane, just enough to keep folks locking their sheds but not their smiles. The town has around 6,000 people, plenty of Waylon Jennings lore, and a pace of life that encourages porch sitting as a daily practice. A local joked, "Our fair is still the big event," and honestly, that's the charm. Nothing rushes here. Even the parking lots feel grateful you showed up. Cotton fields glow at dusk like warm snow drifting across the ground. And our next town trades prairie for greener Texas. Same bargains, new flavor. Gatesville, where the courthouse clock runs the whole town. Walk around Gatesville for a day and you start wondering why more retirees aren't packing up and moving straight into the heart of Central Texas. Farmhouse life fits naturally here. Warm cedar, cicadas, and the courthouse bell tie it all together. You've got space, oak shade, and homes sitting around $185,000 that make Dallas prices look like they were calculated by comedians. Rent hangs near $1,050. Cost of living stays about 14% under the national line. And crime stays in the manageable but keep your shed locked zone. The town is home to 16,000 people. It's wrapped around that old limestone courthouse that still bosses the daily rhythm. Now here's the thing. That courthouse? Some say it's haunted. People whisper about Elroy, a ghost tied to a scandal back in 1909. Cold breezes drift through empty offices, furniture slides on its own, and late at night the faintest tap on your shoulder makes you swear someone's there. Porch sitting in Gatesville is peaceful until you feel the courthouse watching. If Gatesville feels too spooky, the next town wanders like a sleepy ranch dog. Goldthwaite, the pecan capital where time circles the square. Settle into Goldthwaite for a weekend and you'll start eyeing farmhouse listings like you're shopping for porch chairs. A full porch here often runs cheaper than a used pickup in Austin, and that alone grabs the attention of any retiree dreaming of slow mornings and wide open space. Homes hover around $160,000, rent sits near $900, cost of living stays roughly 17% under the national average, and crime sits comfortably low. Here, you'll smell pecan shells, dust, and someone sweeping a porch at noon. If Goldthwaite is a rocking chair, Hamilton is a weathered barn door swinging in the wind. Hamilton, old barns, old stories, and endless pasture lines. Imagine rolling into Hamilton and realizing you could snag a whole acre for less than a parking spot in downtown Houston. That alone makes retirees perk up, especially anyone dreaming of a farmhouse with real elbow room. With a median home around $170,000, rent near $850, and a cost of living about 15% under the national average, this little prairie town quietly checks every box. About 3,000 people live here, surrounded by 19th century stone storefronts and cattle ranges that look like they were sketched by someone who really loves the color pasture. One Redditor summed it up perfectly. Great place if you like cows more than people. The wind carries more stories than the town council ever will, and it has no problem reminding you who's in charge. You'll catch the smell of sun-baked grass, hear grain trucks rumbling through, and feel life slow to a warm, steady rhythm. If Hamilton felt wide open, Brady stretches that horizon even farther. Brady, the heart of Texas, stamped on a ranch town map. One semester at UT Austin costs more than a 4-bedroom farmhouse in Brady, and that pretty much tells you everything about why retirees love this place. You get land, quiet mornings, and a cost of living that feels like it time traveled from the 1990s. You're looking at a market where $155,000 gets you an honest-to-goodness family home, and $900 covers a clean rental without any drama. It's the kind of pricing that makes you wonder if the listing agent accidentally left off a zero. Brady sits right at the geographic center of Texas, a ranch town of about 5,000 people where life moves by cook-offs, lake days, and whoever's firing up the barbecue pit that weekend. A local told me, "We measure time by cook-offs, not clocks," and honestly, that's the energy here. You'll catch mesquite smoke drifting through the air, hear cicadas buzzing over the prairies, and feel the town slow you down in the best way. If you want bigger town conveniences without losing the farmhouse prices, Brownwood is up next. Brownwood, small city energy wrapped in ranch country. Picture this. You roll into Brownwood and realize a starter home costs less than a year of groceries in San Diego. That's when most retirees pause and go, "Hold on, why am I still paying city prices for stress?" Brownwood sits right in the middle of Texas with about 19,000 people, a cozy university, and those old brick blocks that make downtown feel like it never bothered to age. You're looking at $190,000 for a solid house and around $1,050 for rent. The cost of living stays about 12% under the national average, so your retirement budget suddenly loosens up. A local summed it up perfectly. We have everything except a reason to rush. Only downside? The freight train treats your sleep like a suggestion. And if you listen closely while sipping that morning coffee outside the bakery, you might hear locals whisper about the 1976 tornado that ripped through here. 11 people injured, homes flattened, airport hangars shredded. A reminder that even sleepy ranch country has its wild side. Morning scenes hit different here. Fresh coffee outside a bakery while a train rolls by like background music. Head slightly east and the farmland thickens. Comanche waits on the next ridge. Comanche, where vineyards meet cattle country. One minute you're passing cattle, the next you're staring at a tiny family vineyard like you accidentally drove into Tuscany with pickup trucks. Comanche has this weird charm where everything feels slow in a good way. About 4,500 people, rolling hills, Old West storefronts, and a courthouse square that looks like it's been posing for postcards since 1880. And the value here is just silly. You can snag a farmhouse for around $165,000, rent for about $900, and the cost of living sits roughly 16% under the national average. Someone once told me, "Town's quiet enough you can hear your grapes ripen," and honestly, that tracks. Just be ready for farm trucks that take left turns so slowly you start reconsidering your life choices. Comanche smells like cedar, warm grape must, and porch screen doors that never close right. Head south and the ground starts to shift, and the next town gets a bit stranger. Pittsburgh, where the peaches grow sweeter than rent. Pittsburgh feels like a small East Texas town that never tries too hard, and somehow that makes it perfect. About 4,600 people, a cute brick downtown, peach orchards all around. It's calm in that everyone waves at you even if they don't know you way. And the prices? Honestly, kind of shocking. You can find a 3-bedroom farmhouse for around $170,000. Rent sits near $950, and the cost of living is about 15% below the national average. Not bad for a place that smells like peaches half the year. People here are friendly. You might get a basket of peaches, or you might get a rooster kind of way. And yes, the humidity will destroy your hair before breakfast. Think porch swings, sweet fruit in the air, and cicadas louder than your earbuds. If Pittsburgh is orchard calm, Mineola brings train whistles and antique fever. Mineola, railway town wrapped in pine and antiques. Mineola is the kind of East Texas town where retiring on a little farmhouse actually feels doable. It sits right in the piney woods with about 5,200 people, long shade trees, and that old railway depot that makes the whole place feel like you stepped back a few decades. In a good way. And yes, the antique shops are out of control. They pop up like stray cats, but hey, that's perfect if you want to decorate your farmhouse porch for $5. Home prices stay friendly too. A charming older place runs around $185,000. Rent is about $1,000, and the cost of living sits roughly 12% below the national average. Not bad if your retirement plan includes peace, quiet, and maybe a couple of hobby chickens. Evenings smell like pine sap, old wood, and that soft train rattle you barely notice after a week. If Mineola feels vintage, Mount Vernon leans into the courthouse square postcard life. Mount Vernon, a courthouse square that looks painted by hand. Mount Vernon feels like someone built a tiny Texas town, hand-painted every brick, and then said, "Yep, perfect place to retire." It's small, about 2,300 people, but packed with charm. You've got that 1912 courthouse, an arts center, and a whole downtown that looks like it was curated for people who love porch sitting and slow mornings. And for Farmhouse fans, this is your playground. A restored place can run around $200,000, rent sites near $1,050, and the cost of living is still about 10% below the national average. Evenings smell like pine drifting over brick streets with porch lights glowing warm. If that felt serene, Jacksonville turns up the scenery with lakes and hills. Jacksonville, where tomatoes, hills, and porches all compete for attention. Jacksonville feels like East Texas decided to show off a little. You've got rolling hills, a huge lake, and more tomatoes than any town truly needs. And somehow it all works. About 14,000 people live here, and it's a great spot if you want a farmhouse retirement with actual scenery. A place near the lake can run around $185,000, rent lands near $1,050, and the cost of living sits about 13% below the national average. Not bad if your retirement plans include a porch, a boat, or both. Locals keep it real. One told me, "You'll need two things here, patience and a decent boat." Fair. The roads curve so much you'll think the town planner was just chasing a squirrel the whole time. Even with the charm, the town has a shadowed past. The Kiloof Massacre reminds you East Texas could be brutal back in the day. 18 settlers, including women and children, were killed or abducted in what's considered one of East Texas's darkest chapters. But that was in 1838. Now, the town is peaceful. Tomato stands on corners, misty green hills, and that soft tap of dock lines hitting boats at sunset. If Jacksonville felt lively, Palestine stretches those vibes across a historic maze of streets. Palestine, railroads, roses, and one of Texas's oldest downtowns. Palestine is one of those East Texas towns where retiring in a farmhouse actually feels like stepping into a slower timeline, in a good, my blood pressure just dropped kind of way. About 17,000 people, tons of early 1900s homes, and a downtown that looks like it hasn't moved since the railroad boom. And the prices? A Victorian-style place here can sit around $165,000. Rent hovers near $975, and the cost of living is roughly 17% below the national average. That's a solid deal if your retirement dream involves a big porch, a rocking chair, and maybe a rose bush you swear you'll keep alive this time. Locals have jokes. One said, "The dogwoods bloom on their own schedule, unlike the city office." And honestly, that checks out. Deer crossing signs are basically guarantees here. Picture floral blooms, creaky wooden porches, and train horns echoing through those old neighborhoods. Head southeast into denser woods and older soil. The next stop sits on ancient ground. Nacogdoches outskirts. Oldest town energy, but with room to breathe. If you want that piney woods farmhouse life without feeling squeezed into town, the outskirts of Nacogdoches are kind of perfect. You get the history, the oldest town in Texas, deep red brick everywhere, old trails, tall pines. But once you're a few minutes outside the center, it turns into pure country calm. And the value is almost silly. A farmhouse with actual land can sit around $185,000, rent is near $950, and the cost of living hangs about 14% below the national average. Not bad if your retirement dream includes a little elbow room and maybe a garden that finally survives the summer. People out here love the quiet. One local joked, "The trees talk louder than traffic." And honestly, they're not wrong. The only real enemy is the logging trucks that take their sweet time on every road. Think pine needles, soft misty mornings, and long empty roads. Keep heading east and the vibe shifts again, and the next town gets even wilder. Cuero, where legends roam. Cuero is one of those South Texas towns where farmhouse retirement actually feels like stepping into classic old-school Texas, but without the price tag that scares your bank account. About 8,000 people, tons of ranching history, and yes, the famous chupacabra legend that locals still joke about. A farmhouse here can sit around $185,000, rent hovers near $1,050, and the cost of living is roughly 14% below the national average. For retirees wanting warm winters, space, and a porch big enough for 3 rocking chairs, Cuero checks all the boxes. A resident once said, "Town shuts down so early even the chupacabra gets bored." which tells you everything you need to know about the vibe. And the mosquitoes? They act like they own the place. Full land baron energy. But the evenings? Warm dusk air, barbecue smoke drifting across quiet roads, and porch lights blinking on one by one. If you think Cuero is old school, wait till you meet the leatherworking capital up the road. Yoakum, leather town quiet. Step into Yoakum and you immediately feel the shift. Slower mornings, wide ranch lots, and that faint leather scent drifting from its old saddle shops. Around 6,100 people call this place home, but it still feels wide open, especially if you're dreaming of a farmhouse retirement with space to garden, keep a few animals, or just stretch out on a porch built to catch long Texas sunsets. And the prices help seal the deal. Farmhouses hover around $160,000, rents sit near $950, and the cost of living stays about 17% below the national average. Warm winters, big skies, and peace that doesn't have to be earned, just enjoyed. Locals joke that the freight trains are the town's unofficial alarm clocks. They're not wrong. They rumble through with enough confidence to make sure you don't oversleep, ever. And if Yoakum feels like a slow exhale, wait until you see the next stop. A place that still carries its Mission-era heartbeat. Goliad. Time stops at the Mission. Goliad feels like the kind of place where your stress just gives up and walks home. About 2,000 people live here, but honestly, the oak trees feel like half the population. This is old-school South Texas. Spanish missions, ranch land that goes on forever, and farmhouses that sit so peacefully, you start wondering why you ever paid city prices. Back in 1836, Texians and Mexican troops battled here during the Texas Revolution, and the tension still hangs in the air even to this day. You're looking at about $175,000 to buy a decent farmhouse here, with rent hovering near $900 and day-to-day expenses coming in roughly 12% cheaper than the rest of the country. It's peaceful, it's affordable, and yes, it's safe. The only real troublemaker is the internet. A longtime resident put it this way: the sunsets feel holy, but the Wi-Fi feels moly. Head southeast a little and you'll hit a spot where ranch life shakes hands with Navy Town energy. Beeville, ranch meets runway. Beeville is one of those places where you look at the housing prices and think, wait, that's it? A solid 3-bedroom farmhouse usually comes in around $145,000. Rent hangs near $900, and everyday costs sit roughly 18% below the national average. Basically, your retirement budget finally gets to breathe. The vibe here is a mix of ranch country and jet flyovers thanks to the nearby Naval Air Station. About 12,800 people call it home, plus a steady flow of college kids from Coastal Bend College. It's quiet, friendly, and full of wide-open land that practically begs for a porch swing. Now, fair warning, the summers are no joke. Locals say shade might as well be a form of currency. And no, the bees aren't the issue. It's the sun trying to pan-fry you. Picture warm wind, the low hum of jets, and mesquite smoke curling up from someone's backyard pit. Next, keep rolling inland and you'll hit a town where porch culture is stronger than its traffic lights. Oh, Hondo, home on the open road, double asterisk. Roll far enough into South Central Texas and you eventually land in Hondo, where life runs on porch time and nobody's in a hurry to change that. And for retirees dreaming of a simple farmhouse life, the numbers are pretty sweet. Homes sit around $210,000, rent near $1,050, and the cost of living stays roughly 10% under the national average. About 9,300 folks call this place home, along with that legendary roadside message reminding drivers to slow down and behave. You get open ranch country, pecan trees dropping shells like nature's confetti, and warm river air drifting through town. Just don't expect gourmet shopping. As one resident puts it, if it's fancy, it's a road trip. But if you want space, quiet, and morning coffee watching cattle wander past, Hondo nails it. And now we're heading to the town they called as birthplace of the cowboy, Pleasanton. Cowboy birthplace still riding. Slide far enough into South Texas and you hit Pleasanton, a town where the cowboy story never really ended. Retire here and your peace comes cheap. Homes average around $240,000, rent sits near $1,150, and the cost of living runs about 8% below the national average. With about 10,800 people, the town feels quiet but alive. Dusty back roads wind past oak trees, ranches stretch to the horizon, and the air still carries that old cowboy spirit. Back in the 1860s, Pleasanton became a hub for cattle ranching, and by 1873, local cowhands were driving tens of thousands of longhorns through the area, shaping the South Texas ranching legacy that lasts to this day. Locals nod to it every August during the Cowboy Homecoming Festival, when rodeos, old stories, and small-town traditions all collide. And if Pleasanton feels big on cowboy energy, the next stop raises the stakes in altitude and price. Lampasas. Hot springs, cheap acreage, slow mornings. Lampasas is one of those places where your stress just evaporates. Maybe it's the natural sulfur springs. Maybe it's the fact you can actually afford land here without needing a lotto win. A typical farmhouse runs around $265,000. Rent floats near $1,150. And the cost of living sits about 12% under the national average. For retirees chasing space, quiet, and a good porch swing angle, this is a sweet deal. You've got about 8,300 neighbors, an old courthouse square, and ranch roads curling through cedar-covered hills. Crime stays low, and evenings get so quiet the whole town feels like it powered down at 9 p.m. And honestly, it kinda does. And if Lampasas feels peaceful, its next-door cousin takes quiet to a whole new level. Burnett Outskirts, where bluebonnets guard your driveway. If you've ever dreamed of waking up in the hill country without paying hill country resort prices, Burnett's Outskirts are basically your cheat code. You're looking at around $305,000 for a farmhouse, about $1,250 for rent, and a cost of living that stays roughly 10% under the national average. Not bad for a place where your neighbors might be wineries, old German homesteads, or a field of bluebonnets that look like they were painted by hand. The town itself sits around 7,000 people, but the outskirts? That's ranch land, wide skies, and just enough quiet to make your smartwatch think you've disappeared. Crime stays low, and retirees love how peaceful it feels, at least until summer hits and tourists swarm the lakes like ants on a dropped donut. But the scenery makes up for it. Gravel roads, river sunsets, and wildflowers begging for photos every 5 minutes. And if this feels magical, the next one is straight up hill country folklore. Llano. Old granite, old music, new farmhouses. Llano feels like the kind of place where your porch becomes your entire personality, mostly because you can actually afford one. A farmhouse here runs around $260,000, rent sits near $1,000, and the cost of living drops about 14% below the national average. Not bad for a town built around a river, a courthouse that looks carved from sunset-colored stone, and more deer than traffic. It's a small hill country spot, about 3,300 people, and the pace is slow in the nicest way. Just don't expect a wild job market. Locals joke you've basically got 3 careers: ranching, barbecue, or retirement, which honestly fits the vibe perfectly for anyone wanting a peaceful farmhouse life. You'll hear porch guitars at night, smell mesquite smoke, and watch the Llano River shimmer like it's posing for postcards. And if you follow that river west, things get even sweeter. San Saba, pecan capital meets front porch therapy. San Saba is one of those towns where retirement doesn't feel like slowing down. It feels like settling into the good part of life. You can snag a farmhouse for around $240,000. Rent sits close to $950, and the cost of living lands about 16% below the national average. Not a bad trade-off for waking up to pecan orchards, quiet streets, and a town where everyone waves whether they know you or not. The vibe here, 3,100 people, heritage storefronts, and mornings that move basically at the speed of honey. Just don't expect lightning-fast internet. Locals swear it buffers like it's thinking about its life choices. And yes, the pecans are amazing, until they start landing on your roof at 2 a.m. like nature's version of popcorn. Picture fog curling under the river bridge, warm air, and that perfect porch breeze. Head a bit southwest and things get even calmer. Kerrville Outskirts. Riversoft, artist-friendly, surprisingly affordable. In Kerrville, you're close enough to the Guadalupe River and the art galleries to feel cultured, but far enough from the crowds that your morning coffee isn't accompanied by a marching band of tourists. Homes in the $325,000 range are the norm out here. Rents hover around $1,350, and the cost of living still sits comfortably below national levels. Crime stays low, scenery stays high. Of course, the property taxes will occasionally remind you that Texas likes to keep you humble. And every summer, the river fills with floaters who fully believe they're starring in their own aquatic action movie. But step out onto your porch at sunset, watch the light melt over those soft hills, and you'll get it. Want all that with fewer people and even better sunsets? Then brace yourself into number 1 on our list. Marble Falls Outskirts. $1,000,000 views without $1,000,000 problems. If you've ever wanted a place that feels like a screensaver come to life, the outskirts of Marble Falls are it. You're talking granite hills glowing at sunset, a lake that looks filtered even when it's not, and farmhouse properties sitting around the $340,000 mark. Rent sits near $1,450. The cost of living stays below the national average, and the crime rate is low enough that even your garden tools can relax. Of course, weekends get wild. The main road fills up with folks hunting for brisket and boat ramps like it's a competitive sport. And come wildflower season, get ready for total strangers treating your driveway like a professional photo studio. But then evening hits. The wind slides off the granite dome, the lake catches that last warm stripe of light, and suddenly you remember why you're here. And honestly, what better way to end the list? There's something about these Texas farmhouse towns. The mist on the pastures in the morning, that soft gold light drifting through the oaks at sunset. Life finally slows down just enough for you to breathe a little deeper and hear your own thoughts again. So which town felt like the one you've been picturing in your next chapter of your life? Drop your thought in the comment. Hit like if this video helped you imagine a calmer future. And if you're building your retirement dream one town at a time, subscribe and come along for the next ride.